Alone in the wilderness, a forest ranger lay bound to a tree, abandoned by ruthless attackers. His strength was fading, hope slipping away, until a stray dog appeared. What that animal did next wasn't just survival instinct, it was pure courage. And it shocked everyone who later heard the tale. The morning began like any other for Ranger Thomas. With decades of experience protecting the forest, he moved with confidence along the winding trails, listening to the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of birds. The forest was his second home, each path familiar, each sound a part of his daily rhythm. But as he ventured deeper, a sudden rustling behind him shattered the calm. He spun around, but before he could react, rough hands seized him. A sharp blow knocked him to the ground. Dazed and struggling, he felt coarse rope biting into his wrists as unseen men bound him tightly against the trunk of a massive tree. Within moments, the attackers vanished into the woods, leaving only silence. Thomas strained against the ropes, his breath heavy, his heart pounding. He was alone, helpless, and hidden where no one would easily find him. The ropes cut deeper into Thomas's skin as he struggled, twisting and pulling with all the strength he had left. Each movement only burned his wrists raw, leaving him weaker with every attempt. Sweat trickled down his brow despite the cool shade of the forest, his breath growing shallow as he shouted, his voice echoing through the trees. "Help! Somebody please!" But the vast forest swallowed his cries. Birds scattered at the noise, then silence returned. Thick, suffocating, unforgiving. No footsteps, no voices, only the endless hum of insects. Hours dragged on, and the weight of helplessness pressed against him like the ropes themselves. His canteen was gone, his radio out of reach. And the sun was already dipping lower, shadows stretching longer. Fear gnawed at him. Not just for his own life, but for the thought that no one even knew where he was. If night fell, he would be at the mercy of the forest, alone, tied, and forgotten. As the forest grew eerily quiet, Thomas felt his strength slipping. His head hung low, eyes scanning the ground beneath him, when he heard a sound, soft footsteps crunching leaves. His heart skipped. Was it the men returning? Slowly, a figure emerged from the undergrowth. Not a person, but a dog. Thin, scruffy, its ribs faintly visible beneath its fur. The animal moved cautiously, sniffing the air. Its golden brown coat was matted, its eyes sharp yet curious. A stray, Thomas thought, wandering the wilderness for scraps. The dog paused a few feet away, ears twitching at the sight of the bound man. For a tense moment, Thomas feared it might bark and draw attention, or worse, turn aggressive. But instead, the animal lowered its head, staring intently, as if sensing his suffering. Thomas whispered hoarsely, "Hey, boy, come here." His voice cracked with desperation. The dog didn't run. It stepped closer, cautious but steady, tail flicking once. Something in its gaze told Thomas this wasn't a chance encounter. The dog lingered near the tree, pacing back and forth, ears perked as if listening to Thomas's labored breaths. Every so often it stopped, staring at the thick ropes that pinned him against the trunk, then let out a sharp bark that echoed through the forest. Thomas flinched at the sound, fearing it might draw his captors back. But the dog's bark wasn't one of alarm. It was insistent, demanding. It pawed at the ground near his feet, then leapt up, snapping at the ropes before retreating again. Its actions were clumsy, yet deliberate, as though it understood he needed help. Hope flickered inside Thomas's chest. "Good boy. Yes, that's it," he whispered, encouraging the animal with every ounce of strength he had left. The dog growled softly, tugging at the ropes again, its teeth scraping against the coarse fibers. It wasn't random behavior anymore. This stray wasn't simply curious, it was trying to free him. And with each pull, each determined bite, Thomas felt the impossible shift into the faintest glimmer of possibility. The dog pressed closer, its warm breath against Thomas's wrist as it gnawed at the ropes. The fibers stretched, but held, rough and stubborn. Each time the dog pulled away, it shook its head, growled, and returned with renewed determination. Thomas clenched his teeth, urging it on. "Come on, boy. You can do it." His voice was weak, but the hope burning in his chest was stronger than before. He shifted as much as he could, angling his arms so the ropes would strain against the dog's tug. Slowly, painfully, the strands began to fray. Minutes dragged into what felt like hours. The dog panted heavily, its tongue lolling, yet it refused to stop. With each bite, small threads snapped, falling to the ground like tiny victories. Thomas's heart raced. Freedom was neared at last. The ropes loosened enough for him to twist one hand free. His blood-starved fingers screamed as circulation returned, but he didn't care. With trembling urgency, he untangled the rest, pulling himself away from the tree. Collapsing to his knees, he reached for the stray, tears stinging his eyes. "You saved me," he whispered. The dog wagged its tail once, proud, as though it understood. Thomas had barely caught his breath when the dog froze, ears pricking, body stiff. A low growl rumbled from its chest as its eyes fixed on the bushes ahead. The ranger's relief evaporated. He knew that sound. Danger was near. The undergrowth rustled, and shadows emerged. The same men who had ambushed him stepped back into the clearing, their cruel smiles sharper than knives. Well, one of them sneered. "Looks like you didn't stay tied for long." Thomas's heart pounded. He was weak, half exhausted, barely able to stand. But the dog stood in front of him, teeth bared, hackles raised. A living shield between him and the threat point. One man lunged forward. But the stray barked ferociously, snapping at his legs, forcing him back. The others hesitated, startled by the animal's fearless defiance. The forest, moments ago silent, now rang with chaos, shouts, growls, the clash of desperation. Thomas stumbled to his feet, fueled by sheer will. The dog darted around him, every move a barrier against the attackers. For the first time, fear flickered in their eyes. They hadn't expected resistance, not from a man barely standing, and certainly not from a stray dog. Thomas staggered backward, his hand brushing against the emergency flare still clipped to his belt. Summoning the last of his strength, he yanked it free, striking it to life. A brilliant red light blazed into the air, hissing as smoke curled upward through the canopy. The attackers cursed, realizing their cover of secrecy was gone. One charged forward in desperation, but the dog lunged, teeth sinking into his sleeve, forcing him to stumble back with a cry of pain. Another tried to circle around, only to be met by Thomas swinging a heavy branch torn from the ground. Weak as he was, the strike carried the weight of survival. Minutes felt like eternity, but soon the sound of engines roared in the distance. Backup arrived, officers spilling into the clearing, weapons drawn. The men were forced to the ground, their threats silenced by handcuffs and authority. Thomas collapsed to his knees, trembling with exhaustion. The stray padded back to him, tail wagging faintly, as if to say, "We did it." Days later, Thomas returned to the station, his wrists bandaged but his spirit stronger than ever. Beside him trotted the stray, no longer just a nameless wanderer, but a hero in his own right. Officers gathered, shaking their heads in disbelief at the tale of how a dog had saved one of their own. Thomas knelt, resting a hand on the dog's scruffy fur. "You're no stray anymore," he whispered. Papers were signed, and with a stroke of a pen, the dog officially had a new home. From that day forward, the ranger and his unlikely rescuer became inseparable. Where Thomas patrolled, the dog followed, loyal and steadfast. What began as a desperate fight for survival had blossomed into a bond of trust and love, proof that even in the darkest moments, light can come on four paws.